how's everybody doing? In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys some tips on how to play fast for a long time straight without getting tired. First of all, if my voice sounds kind of weird, it's because I'm sick right now, so I apologize for that. Okay, so the first thing, if you want to play fast for a long period of time, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you're hydrated. I know that sounds like a very basic tip, but it's good to do in general, and it'll help your playing in general. You'll notice less cramping up. I know that sounds like a very basic tip, but in that clip I just showed you, I realized in the middle of that playing that I had not really drank any water, straight water, all day, and it's now the evening, and so I just had 3 glasses of water. And I noticed that because my hand almost was right on the edge of starting to cramp up, and I thought, wow, that's really not the best example to set for this video. But there we go. Tip number 1, make sure you're hydrated. Stay hydrated all the time. It's healthy, obviously. And your playing will be better if you're hydrated, whether you're playing fast or slow. Now my next tip is to use a pattern that you are totally comfortable with. You want to use something that ideally is completely muscle memory, so you don't want to be thinking about where your fingers are going while you're also trying to focus on prolonging your playing, because you'll find that trying to play fast for a long time, continually, can take a lot of focus just to keep yourself on track. So you don't want to have another thing to think about, which is where to put your fingers. Start playing the pattern as you normally would, and then as you play, pay very close attention to the technique that you're using. Now, of course, there is a time and place for forceful playing, if you want to do forceful hammer-ons, real forceful inflections, but for the sake of playing fast for a long period of time, what you're going to want to do is trim down the technique that you're using to where you are just using minimal movement in order to get the notes out. And you're going to want to use small movements, but I don't want you to hear that and think that you need to tense your hand up to make really small movements, because that is absolutely not what you should do. What you actually want to do is make sure that your hands are loose, both your fretting hand and your strumming hand. You're going to want your fretting hand to be fairly loose on the neck, fairly light on the frets, and you're definitely not going to want to be gripping the neck in any sort of way, because that's going to be constricting your arm, and it's going to, number 1, it's going to block your blood flow, and number 2, it's going to constrict your technique. And the same thing goes for your strumming hand. You don't want to have any tension in your arm, your forearm, your wrist, your hand muscle for your thumb. You don't want to have any tension anywhere. As the time goes on that you're playing, you might feel like the natural inclination might be that you need to gradually add in tension in your arm, and that is not true. You want to have just the bare minimum amount of movement to pick and keep it loose. You want no tension, because that, like I said, will constrict your muscles, and it makes it almost impossible to shred with an aerobic approach rather than an anaerobic, just fast burst where whether your hand is tight or loose doesn't really matter. In this case, it matters. You want to have no additional tension, and really you don't want to have tension in your arm if you're playing no matter what. The next tip I have is that as you're playing, you're going to want to make sure that you're breathing, and breathe as deeply as you need to. The most well-balanced approach to soloing would be to play emotively some of the time and then shred some of the time. You don't want to be shredding all the time usually, but you might sometimes, and hence the purpose of this video. And it's also nice to know that you have headroom, that if you wanted to shred longer you could, But because I think most people recognize that a well-balanced playing style only includes shredding sprinkled in here and there, a lot of people might think of shredding as an anaerobic thing, meaning you go into it, you stop breathing, and you just do your pattern and then you go. And you might not even realize that you stop breathing, but if you think, oh, I'm only gonna have to play this fast for 5 or 10 seconds, then you're gonna, all of a sudden, you're gonna wanna hit that pattern hard, and you're gonna focus entirely on that, and you're probably not gonna breathe properly. And if you wanna play fast and go the distance, you need to breathe. So that's the tip, is just breathe as much as you need to, breathe deeply, breathe calmly, don't hyperventilate, don't do anything ridiculous. So once you're playing with a streamlined, efficient, effective technique, you're not wasting movement, and you're not tense, and you're breathing, the next tip I have is to think about something else while you're playing. As much as you need to, keep the technique in the back of your mind so that you don't fall out of the pattern. But think about something while you're playing that is just totally nothing to do with guitar. It doesn't have to be. Just think about anything you want. Think about something enjoyable, think about something inspirational, especially think about something inspirational and just keep yourself going. Because in this scenario, for what I'm trying to show you for this video, you're not going to be needing to be coming up with melodies because you're going to be running a pattern that is just muscle memory. So your mind can wander, and it should wander to something that you enjoy thinking about. And by doing this, you almost won't even feel your hands after a while. You might have to actually bring yourself out of it just to feel your pick strokes or to feel when your fingers touch down on the fretboard. You don't necessarily want to be feeling your hands and bringing yourself out of that moment. You want to be kind of in some sort of zone. And the last tip I have is to play either rhythmically or non-rhythmically, depending on what you need to. You're not going to want to push your absolute fastest speed of playing if you're going for distance. So you're going to want to play at a speed that's comfortable, but not insanely fast where you're going to just burn out no matter what. And then depending on the tempo of the song, you can play either rhythmically, meaning every single note that you play corresponds to a beat or a smaller increment of what would be exactly on beat, or you could play non-rhythmically, meaning one or two of the notes in your pattern are going to line up with a beat every time, but not all of them will line up. If you have to slow it down a little bit, that's fine. If you have to speed it up a little bit, that's fine. And either way, whether you're playing exactly rhythmically or non-rhythmically, where only one or two notes line up and the rest are going to fall somewhere in between beats, if you're playing fast and you're playing non-rhythmically, it'll sound different. It has its own style, but it will still sound good and it'll still sound fast. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to share it and subscribe, and I will see you next time.